Good morning. Welcome again to this week's live IGTV. This morning I'm talking about your teen keeps lying, and no matter what you're trying, discipline, nothing is changing. You are grounding them. You're taking away privileges. You are trying to enforce the values that you know you've raised them under, and yet they keep lying to you. And at some point you get to a place where you go, okay, hang on, like, where have I failed? Because this child is showing up so far outside of the values that we stand for in our family. And could you just stab the knife in my heart a little further? Because after everything we've done for you, then you treat us like this, that you would lie to us? And then you wonder, like, is your teen beyond repair? I mean, is there any hope? Are they morally broken? Okay, we're going to jump in and address all of this. If this sounds familiar, I want you to stick around. If this sounds like someone that you know, I'd love if you share this video with them after. Thank you for joining me here on Instagram. Hit the follow button if you're on YouTube. Give a girl a subscribe. My name is Allie Payne. I am a certified life coach, certified relationship systems coach. I have been working with parents of teens for the last 15 years to help them end the painful disconnection, emotional blow-ups, and stressful silences to create relationships based on trust and respect. Two things that are required if we're going to look at lying. I'm going to tell you straight up, I was a teenager who lied all the time. I lied like a carpet. I lied like a rug, I think we used to say in the 80s. I lied all the time. And I want to help you understand the reason behind your teenagers lying, to help you approach this very hurtful and difficult situation in a different light that is more likely to walk you through this and have a more open and honest relationship, as opposed to what we were taught as when we were parented, right? To just like shut that down right now and just press harder and harder until your teenager fits the mold that you're looking for, which there's nothing wrong with. And that creates greater and greater disconnection and disrespect. So you only get more and more of what it is that you didn't want in the first place. And I understand that sounds counterintuitive. So let's jump in and I'm going to walk you through. Okay, so if this is something you relate to, or you know someone who's really struggling with this with your teen, again, just type a heck yeah in the comments so I can see that we're on the same page here. As a teenager, I used to lie a lot. And my parents knew that I lied. And it was very, very hurtful and painful for them. Okay, good. Now I know I'm not alone. Good. That's awesome. Thank you. I used to lie. I'm going to tell you why. I grew up in a home that, as per the times, my parents were very, very strict because they loved me. Okay? They're not bad or evil people. It's because they loved me. They were trying to keep me safe. And parenting of the time was based on a more industrialized military model, which was command, control, absolute authority. And so my personality style was a struggle for them. I'm extremely extroverted, way out there with all of my emotions, big, loud, and messy. I was not of the time, I was compliant when I was younger. But I was not your like appropriate, in a box, put together child. I was also clumsy, chaotic. I mean, I don't mean like I had a messy room or anything like that, but they were really challenged already with my personality style. And I'm telling you that because there was an underlying rift as it was, okay? Where the way I showed up in the world, the authentic me, the only way I knew how to be, was already embarrassing and shameful for them. And these are words that were used, so I'm not making that up, okay? That was embarrassing and shameful for them. So I was already coming from a perspective where I did not have an experience of true belonging. I want you to stay with me. I'm going to get to the lying, but you have to understand this part first, okay? You got to understand this part first. Because I did not experience true belonging, which many teenagers don't. And it's not because you don't love your teen. It is because you are doing what you were raised with. Guys, I'm getting some clicking in my ears. Can you just tell me if the audio is working? Can you just put yes if you can hear me? I don't know if my headphones are connecting properly. I'm sorry if they're not. So because I already felt like I wasn't the way they wanted to be. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that. Because I already felt like there was a part of me that was annoying to them, that was unacceptable, that I needed to deny, abandon, or suppress to earn their love, I didn't experience true belonging. Now, this is the secret to this, okay? Now, true belonging, as defined by Dr. Brené Brown, who's a vulnerability researcher, true belonging is that it doesn't require me to be anything but who I am. True belonging is I can show up as who I am, even if that is different from you. And I feel loved and accepted and celebrated in my differences, rather than scoffed at, looked down upon, made to feel as less than, even at a moral level, annoying, embarrassing, shameful, just like, oh my gosh, right? That kind of contempt. That is the definition of, that's the opposite of true belonging. That says the who you are in your core is not welcome here at some level, okay? I am not saying you necessarily do these things to your teenager, and certainly not intentionally. Of course not, of course. What I'm telling you is the teenage brain is highly emotionally reactive, highly susceptible to judgment and criticism. Those are the two things I'm just talking about there. Judgment and criticism. Even if you're saying, good morning, I love you, they can be like, oh my gosh, how can you be so mean? Like, it is a normal disconnect between parents and teenagers. And it's why this information and why I do what I do is so critical. Not because I'm asking you to tolerate sassy, backtalk, disrespectful behavior. Nope, not that. And not because it's okay to require your teen to give up what is authentic and true for them as they're figuring out who they're becoming in order to please you. It's neither. There's a middle, okay? So, a lack of true belonging, and I'm not saying don't have boundaries with your teenager, like just because they're different from you, but I mean celebrating differences. Like, oh my gosh, look at you, like you're so unique the way you do that. The rest of us don't do that, and the way you do that, how cool. Instead of like, oh my gosh, why do you do that? It's subtle, but it's really not subtle for your teen. Now, the reason true belonging meshes completely with lying, okay, is because a lack of true belonging on the experience of your teenager. And I also am sorry, but it doesn't matter if you have won every parenting Olympics for the last decade. This is about perception is reality. Your teenager's perception is their reality. If they perceive that they don't belong in your home, in your relationship, that who they are authentically is not welcome or celebrated in all of its weirdness and like uniqueness and with boundaries, of course, then they don't feel like they belong. And when your teenager doesn't feel like they belong, this is when lying, this is one of the key roots of why lying begins. So for me, I did not feel like I have a belonging, sense of belonging. And so I didn't feel safe, because that leads to emotional safety. I didn't feel safe to be sharing things with my parents that teenagers can do. Like I couldn't share my curiosity. I couldn't share my my struggles, my things, because I didn't feel, and maybe that was only my perception, I don't know. I made up a story that those were not welcome. It was unsafe for me to share those things, so I needed to keep them to myself. Okay, so when it's not okay for your teenager to talk about the taboo things, and to talk about like their friends have gone drinking, their friends are trying vaping, maybe their friends are already dating, they're sexually active, steeper drugs or shoplifting, stealing, all of the things. In order for your teenager to feel safe to talk about those things with you, they got to have true belonging. And then there has to be emotional safety where you are not highly reactive when these uncomfortable taboo topics come up. When your teenager feels safe to bring those taboo, messy things that push all the parenting buttons and have you question all of the values that you wonder are in your teenager's head, or better or worse yet, who the heck are they hanging out with? Loser! Ground them for life and lock them up, throw away the key because they're not hanging out with those people anymore. All of those things. When your teenager feels safe to bring and talk about the taboo topics with you, not because you are going to launch into a lecture about morality and what is good choices and bad choices. No, not that. Backtalk, sass, all of those things, by the way, are part of a function of the growth of the teenage brain. They are developing the capacity for far more complex emotional feelings, but they do not have the intellectual filter to effectively express them all, so it comes out really messy in the raw feed, okay? That's normal. You can set boundaries around that, but expecting them to have an adult brain is ridiculous, because they don't. It is your job to help them refine their expressions, not by shutting them down, but by helping them find new words, different ways of expressing. Now, if they can talk to you about a messy taboo topic like weed, that's a hot one right now, is vaping, and you get curious over critical and you listen over lecture. You say, okay, so tell me more about that. What are you learning? What's word on the street? Like, be super uncool, okay? Like, what's word on the street these days about vaping or whatever? Get curious and ask them. Listen. When you listen, you build trust, emotional safety, so that they're more willing to bring these taboo topics to you and they're less likely to lie. The point of you listening is not because you're like, well, when do I tell them all of the facts and the data and all the reasons they shouldn't do that? I mean, I'm a parent. This is my job. This is what I should do. Back down off your soapbox there, sister. You will get far more bang for your buck by listening and helping your teenager get curious about what's running around in their brain, okay, about these taboo topics. Help them to process some of those things, and then very briefly drop in your little things about, I'm concerned, a lot of the research shows that THC is, it delays the development of your frontal lobes and your prefrontal cortex and inhibits, whatever. But don't go into some scientific study and send them pages that don't do that. Okay, so these are things that encourage lying. If your teenager doesn't feel like they are truly welcome in all of their messy authenticity in your home, if they don't feel safe to discuss their curiosities about sex, drugs, rock and roll, religion, all of the things, if they do not feel safe, emotionally safe, to have those kinds of taboo topics, discussions, curiosity with you and bounce things about and process as they are developing their own values and beliefs, they're going to lie. This is how I grew up. Not because my parents are bad, because they raised me in the parenting methods of the time. Okay? So I lied a lot because I didn't feel welcome for who I was. So I felt like I felt shame, like I had to hide parts of me. And I definitely could not discuss taboo topics, or I would be grounded just for even bringing them up. Okay? Now, if this does not sound like you, and you're like, well, that's fine, Allie, but we don't do those things. We have a great open relationship, and yet my teenager's still lying. Okay. What I'm going to go, here's the next step. I used to sit in my room when I was going to lie, and I used to evaluate the situation, the morality of it. Did it feel morally right to me? Morally okay? Was I going to be hurting anyone or anything? And then, what was the risk? The police being arrested. I mean, seriously, what was the risk? I used to sit in my room before I would lie, and I would measure out these things. And if I came to a decision that felt right for me, that felt morally right, that I was not going to hurt anyone or anything, and that the risk was very low, that I wasn't going to get arrested. I actually didn't go to a lot of bush parties. I didn't go to a lot of bush parties because I was underage and drinking, and I knew bush parties were ripe for police to show up, and that I didn't want that. So I did measure risk. Those are the 3 things I would measure. And if that met all of my criterion, because my parents were going to instantly say no, they were very strict, again, not for bad reason, then I would lie. So what I want you to understand is what I've talked about for the last 20 minutes is one of the roots of lying is creating true belonging and emotional safety. Those will alleviate some of the lying, not all. Here are other reasons that teenagers lie. And this is, the teen brain lacks emotional regulation and impulse control. So sometimes some of the things they're doing that are less than favorable, less than awesome choices, are not premeditated. They're doing them because they lack impulse control. So they'll go do something really stupid that you're like, what the heck? But that's because there wasn't a premeditation and their impulse control is not yet developed. It doesn't make them stupid. This does not directly or indirectly impact their intelligence. Do not make that mistake or assumption. Okay? So impulse control, lack of impulse control is one of the reasons, is they're going to do something without thinking about it, kind of in the moment, impulsivity, and then they're going to have to lie about it after because they knew it was wrong, they knew it was stupid, they fear judgment and criticism, okay? They fear retribution, consequences, of course, okay? They also fear disappointing you. Flat out, they fear disappointing you. And that is a primal survival technique, because if you're not loved by your parents, if you're not kept safe in that relationship, then you are and ostracized, and you're out on your own. And for survival reasons, they will lie out of pure primal reasons to maintain your love and relationship so they feel safe. Okay? Now, teenagers will also lie because they purely hold a different set of values than you do. They don't know how to have discussions about really hard topics. Again, I'm going to go to vaping and weed again because it's one of the hottest ones. And they are in a world where they are wired for risky behavior. The teenage brain is wired for risky behavior because of the lack of emotional regulation and impulse control. But one of the core emotional needs of the teenage brain is novelty, excitement, adventure, newness. So when they don't have a constructive outlet for that, which I honestly, in today's world, it is difficult to do that. And I'm not asking you to go spend millions of dollars or go bankrupt or do things that are unreasonable. But the teenage brain is wired for that. So this is one of the reasons why parenting a teen is so exhausting. Because then if you don't want them doing all the other like shady crap, that means how do you, and also personality styles are very different, okay? So if you have a really introverted teen, their version of adventure and excitement is going to look very different than someone who was like me, an extreme extrovert, who needed constant newness, novelty, adventure, which I saw doing some destructive things, okay? Your teenager doesn't know how to create that in a constructive way. So it's one of the reasons why it's important. And another thing on your plate, I know, to do with your teen, to create, and it doesn't have to be something new every time. Like I have a lot of parents who are very outgoing and they do things like mountain biking. It's where we live, the climate suits that. They do a lot of mountain biking, camping, fishing, like going, it's adventuring, especially for young boys. It's very critical to have that in there, and it does curb risk-taking behavior. And lying is up there with risk-taking behavior. Okay, so here's why the disciplining and punishing to get your teenagers to stop lying doesn't work. Can you guys type a yes if you're still following along? What I've tried to do in the last 30 minutes, the first part of this video, is to give you the foundation of why this is happening, to give you a different perspective and understanding. I'm not trying to make it okay, so you can understand why it's happening, okay? Okay, thanks, Amanda, great. I really, there's so much I can pack in this video, but I'm really trying to make this as tangible and concrete as possible. So, discipline and punishment do not work to stop the lying because they are purely addressing the behavior. Oh, I'm so glad. Okay, thanks everybody. Thank you for letting me know. I'm not always easy to track. I understand that. It's hard sometimes to make sense of what I'm saying, so I do appreciate that. When you address the behavior, purely the behavior, again, as heartbreaking as this is, and it literally is, when you find out your teenager or your child has lied to you, it's like a stab in the heart. It is like a stab in the heart. So if you feel heartbroken because your teenager has lied to you, I see you, and I'm so sorry that it just feels like such a slap in the face when you have sacrificed so much time, energy, and resources to help this human being have a life that is, of course, better than what you got. And that's what we're always trying to do as parents is give them a better life than what we had, right? The discipline and punishment focuses only on the behavior and not all of the underpinning that I just talked about. And so your teenager feels less seen, less heard, less understood. They feel more disrespected and controlled. And so, yes, it does make the behavior worse. I am not saying ever that there should never be discipline or consequences for the lie. I did not say that. I am only saying that purely focusing on the behavior through punishment, discipline, or consequences will guarantee you to get more of the same, because it does not address all of the underpinning. Now, there's a couple other, so usually when it's a consequence or a discipline or punishment for the lying, it's kind of like you, first of all, and again, I've got no judgment about this at all. Like, it would be normal because you are hurt to react rather than respond, and to go into, how dare you, after everything we do for you, and this is the way you treat us? No, that's it. You're not taking the car again, or you're grounded for a week. You're not seeing those people. That's it. I'm taking your phone, your electronics. You get in your room. We will slide pizza under the door if you're lucky, and you're not coming out for a week, maybe a month. I understand that. I get it. What happened in that interaction was you emotionally reacting from pain, anger, fear, all normal. And your teenager didn't get a chance to tell you or talk through what happened. Connect before you correct. Connect before you correct. So instead, what I want, yes, is after you've calmed down, which again, you are totally entitled to all of those feelings. And you might say to your teen, you know what? I'm not available to discuss this with you right now. So I'm going to move away. Like, you're modeling healthy coping, okay? Healthy processing. I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going for a drive for a bit. And when I get back, I want to discuss this with you. That's it. Okay. Yes, parents take this very personally. Great question. And it would be pretty hard not to, though. Okay. It's pretty hard not to take this personally when your teenager lies to you about something, to take it as a personal cut against you. Your teenager, I guarantee you, did not premeditate in their room or in some particular moment how much they can possibly hurt you or piss you off. That isn't actually true. Your teenager's not doing that. They don't have the intellectual processing yet to premeditate that kind of thing that can be about you. Their brain is very self-focused. It's very self-centered. They trust me. They're not doing this just to spite you. Okay? So let that go. Once you have effectively calmed down and you can get together with your teen and you can say, okay, here's the first thing I want you to say. I don't want you to lecture. I don't want you to say anything. Actually, because this isn't about you. Remember, this has to be about creating belonging, true belonging, and emotional safety. Because when you build those even after lying, you will reduce the lying. So I want you to say this to your teen. Help me to understand. Now, your teenager, that's if your teenager knows that they got caught in the lie, okay? If they don't know that they got caught in the lie, once you've calmed down, then you go to them and say, I would like to talk to you for a bit. No phones, let's put our phones away. I really would like to hear from you, okay? Then you say, only present your data. Do not go into, you did this, how could you're not calmed down yet. Go away till you're calmed down, then come back. If they don't know, then you can say, here's what has come to my attention, or here's what I have heard, or here's what I saw. And give just your data, okay? And then say, help me to understand. Okay? So help me to understand. Yes, these absolutely are discussed in private. Great question. These are, you publicly praise and you privately correct. Publicly praise, privately correct. Because otherwise this is wildly humiliating, tanks emotional safety, and you have just undone everything you're trying to do. So great question, thank you. So you say, help me to understand, and then I want you to do this. Shut it. Use these, not this. That's it. Just help me to understand. Give your teenager the floor. Messy and all of the rest of it. To explain the situation, who was there, what happened, how maybe they don't know why they did it, which a lot of teenagers don't, because they don't have impulse control or emotional regulation. So they can't tell you the entire premeditation of the risk-taking behavior because they don't have that. Okay? It can just be, well, I didn't even think about it. It just happened and then I didn't know what to do and I was scared to tell you. Or it can be, well, sorry, mom and dad, but I think you're dumb and I hate your rules and I don't see any problem with this. You could get both ends of the scale. I don't know. But it has to start with help me to understand. Okay? And then zip it. All you do from there is ask small, short questions. Okay? And then what happened? And because here's what happens with lying. Your teenager's brain, remember, they're wired for adventure, novelty, newness, seeking. Ask them, what were you wanting? What were you wanting from this experience? Like a lot of teenagers they want adult level independence, but they're not ready for it. So they will lie to create adult level independence and just experience. They just want to feel like an adult. They just want to not feel like a kid. That's why I did it too. So they're exercising their independence all over the place, but not in really healthy ways. So ask them, what is it that you wanted from, like, what were you trying to create? How did you want to feel? Did you get that out of this? What did you think might happen? Like, what were you hoping would happen? And then what did happen? Were you worried were you scared? I mean, get so curious without any attachment to their answers or retribution for their answers. Because you see, in your curiosity, you are not condoning the behavior, but through your curiosity, you're building emotional safety. You are also helping their brain to process some of the thought and emotions behind, because all behavior is driven by emotion, all of it. You're helping them to put together and connect the synapses in their developing brain by and just being curious and helping them, okay? Then you can get to, okay, what would you do if you were me? If you were the parent in this situation, what would you do? And ask them. Because they might say, I don't know what they might say, but you would be shocked what teenagers will actually reveal to you when they say, yeah, well, let it go. Or, I hope you still love me. Like, you could get any end of this, okay? Sorry, I want to answer, what if they're not ready to talk and they really, and you need to know immediately? Then you say, look, I respect that you're not ready to discuss this yet. I get that. There's some very time-sensitive things that must be handled about this. I just need this and this information from you, and then we can discuss this later. So you say, look, I love you. We are going to discuss this later when you are ready. I need to handle this right now so that we can maybe abate even greater damage or something from happening. That's it. You just do that, okay? Should there be consequences? I'm getting there. This is part of my compassionate consequence formula. And these roots that I'm discussing, emotional safety and true belonging, are part of every single program that I offer. Because unfortunately, with older parenting models, again, not because our parents are bad, they didn't have this information. Now we understand that that connection is the number one ingredient to influencing your teen. Not control, which is what was thought before. Connection is what creates influence. And connection means emotional safety and true belonging. Okay, so I'm giving you the formula. So should there be negative consequences? I don't know. You have to decide. But I'm telling you that this conversation I'm walking you through will get you far further than purely a consequence. There may be a consequence as well, but it's this compassionate, curious conversation where behavior changes because you're helping your teenager to walk through the process and develop their intellectual brain, which is currently developing, to understand risk analysis, independent decision making, build their values, their own values and beliefs, which just because you birthed them may not be yours. Okay, so the connect before you correct is actually where the behavior changes, not the consequence. So you can just let that go right now. You're welcome to go research it. Consequences alone do nothing to change behavior. Zero. In fact, they will escalate conflict, escalate disrespect, decrease communication, and tank your connection. So you choose. I'm not talking out my ass here. This is all research based. Okay. In this conversation, help me to understand, get super curious without attachment to their answers. And because you're helping their brain connect the dots, okay, which is part of its growth process. Then you ask them, what would you do if you were me? If you were the parent right now, what would you do? And you would be surprised what teenagers will say. Okay. You do need to assure them that you love them. I'm going to say that again. Assure your teenager you love them. Your love is not conditional to their choices. Their choices might be less than flavorful, like just not appealing. But them as a human being, you love them. You do not love their choice. Those are two different things. Let's not conflate their worth as a human being and your love conditional to them making choices that reflect well on you. That was how previous generations were raised. It's very performative, and it is completely against the whole true belonging thing. Okay, so let's not do that. Assure your teenager, I love you. This is hard for me. You can say that. This is really hard for me. I love you. Here's what I think feels right going forward. Now, you might not know the answer to the consequence or the appropriate discipline in that moment, and that is okay. You can say, I love you. I'm really grateful that you shared these things with me to help me understand. I am going to need a bit to go and decide to really consider what feels right, or I might need to go talk to your dad, or I might need to go talk to your mom or the co-parent or whatever. I promise I will get back to you as soon as I can, because otherwise it's like you're lording fear over them, waiting to like deliver your verdict. Don't do that. Okay. That's an inappropriate use of power. So you say to them, I'm going to get back to you. If you don't know what it is, then you can go and think about it for a little bit. But when you're going to think about it, remember that the discipline and consequence alone will not change behavior. The connection that builds understanding will. Okay? So perhaps when you come back, or maybe they told you like a consequence that you was so good and you never would have thought of, which often teenagers will, and you can say, okay, that feels appropriate. We're going to do that for a week. Now, or maybe you go back and you think about it and you come back and you say, hey, Kay, look, I want to talk to you about this. This is what your mom and I, or your dad and I, or the co-parent or whatever, this is what we've decided feels right for us. We want to let you know that we love you, and we understand being a teen is hard and your brain is developing, and some of these, the emotional, the needing novelty and adventure and newness and excitement is normal in the teen brain. You see how I'm saying that they're not like evil and a spawn of Satan? And it's our job as parents to help you find really constructive and healthy ways to experience that, which is necessary for your brain. So these are the consequences that we've decided on. Okay, now let's get to consequences real quick. Number 1, grounding for more than 7 days has been studied to have lost efficacy. If you ground your teenager longer than 7 days, you increase experience of isolation, anxiety, depression, loneliness, and even increase conflict, anger, rage, or disrespect. So don't go grounding for a month. Like, I know it might feel good for you, but you're really not doing anything, okay? Teenagers say they would rather learn a life skill and do something with you than purely losing a privilege. What if you talk it out and don't set a consequence? That's a great point. Sometimes a consequence isn't required because the conversation was transformational enough. Sometimes a consequence is not always required. It depends. Your teenager might be in a mess and saying, I'm so sorry. I knew it was wrong and I know I shouldn't have done it. I'm so sorry. I will never do this again. It was awful. And you're like, okay, I hear you. I love you. We'll get through this. Maybe you don't need a consequence until maybe if they do it again, then you end up in this situation. Then maybe you do deliver a consequence. That's up to you. Okay. When you deliver the consequence, taking privileges does not have a greater impact than adding chores. They're not really, neither one is really that great. Just be careful with the whole, don't be a one-hit wonder with taking your phone. Please don't. Just please don't, okay? Because the taking your phone can increase experience of isolation, depression, loneliness, because it is how teenagers connect these days. Maybe you limit access to certain apps, or you put a time limit on their phone, and they only get it certain hours of the day during that 1 week. That's totally appropriate. But the phone, unless the consequence has to fit the crime. So if it had nothing to do with the phone, why are you taking the phone? Because it's the thing that matters most to them, and then you make sure you're driving home your point? That's not transformational. Teenagers tell me they would rather learn life skills. So as long as they don't have a whole lot more going on. Oh, here's the other thing. A consequence should not necessarily be removing other social interaction or sports or things like that. Not necessarily. Sometimes that's appropriate. Because again, that meets their need for the physical outlet, the newness, the adventure. So you want to support the sport. Get creative about your consequence and try and have it meet the crime. Could they wash dishes with you for a week? Maybe they have to learn how to clean out the car properly. Maybe they have to mow the lawn. Maybe they need to help you paint the deck. Maybe they have to take out, I don't know what it is. But the consequence is used to connect and correct. Which means, unlike how we were raised, where punishment and discipline was intended to isolate us and intended to reinforce the emotional pain, to somehow coerce us into changing our behavior. That has been proven to be harmful and even create emotional trauma. So it's not helpful. So in the consequence, you tell your teen over and over, I love you. I know this is hard and I know it sucks. You're doing great and I believe in you. Can you imagine when you had a transgression with your family, if your parents would have said that to you while you were grounded? I love you. I know this is hard. I believe that you're a good person. I believe in you. and this sucks, and you're doing great. So whether your teen is learning how to clean the car, whether they're learning how to, do dishes properly, mow the lawn, etc., you're mentoring them in a life skill. Encourage them. Let them know you love them, you believe in them. So you're not increasing the experience that isn't helpful. So you're not using it as a way to like, that's it, you go to your room and you think about what you've done and don't you come out until you have. Like it so doesn't work. It's been scientifically proven to make things worse. Okay? I want to thank you for listening today, and I hope that this has helped you to better understand your teen brain and why they are lying. It doesn't make you a bad parent, and it doesn't make them the spawn of Satan, okay? Or broken. This is a hard time. Their brain is wired for some of this stuff. And your greatest powers are going to be creating true belonging, so they know that whoever they are is welcome and you celebrate your differences. Emotional safety, you make all the topics welcome and open, not taboo. And you understand that their brain is wired this way, so you can help direct them to constructive behaviors and not, when they lie, have it end your relationship. Or worse yet, say, that's it, you are not trustworthy. Now I don't trust you. I've done a whole other video on trust is earned, which is bullshit. It's not. Trust is actually given. Science can prove that too. Your teenager is trustworthy, even if they've made a decision that is outside of your values. Okay, so be careful of that. If there's repetitive lying, that I don't trust you, I understand you might be having a difficult time trusting, 100%, for sure. I also want you to work on forgiveness and these underpinnings, because if they keep doing it repeatedly, there's more going on under the surface. Don't be swayed by the smoke of the fire. You can chase that smoke for miles, my friend, but you are not getting to the source of the fire. You are not getting to the root of the issue. And you and I were not raised understanding these skills. So God bless you for even being here and listening. This was not information our parents had. This is the root of every one of my programs, because it's scientifically backed, research proven, to create the connection that will avoid the need for more consequences, and it will decrease lying. Lying still might happen. 96% of teens admit they've lied, and the other 4 are probably lying about having lied, okay? So can we get over that this is a moral thing, and that if your teenagers lied even once, you're obviously having failed, and can we let that go, please? If you have questions, I would love to hear from you in the comments. You can reach me on Instagram at Allie Payne, on YouTube, Allie Payne, or on TikTok at Allie Payne, although comments are a little bit harder to manage though, because there's a lot more of them. If you want more resources, you can tap the link in my bio here on Instagram, and there's lots there. All of my programs are starting again in September. Registration will open on Monday for my 5-day challenge. 5 days to a better relationship with your teen. The registration opens on Monday. It is $25 Canadian. That's about $19 US for 5 days of content that will begin to help you address these kinds of things like boundaries and consequences and creating connection with your teen, so you can instantly begin to have a more open, honest relationship with your teen and start to ditch the resentment, heartbreak, hopelessness, and frustration. Watch my social media. You will absolutely get all of the links and information there. Thank you so much for joining me, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.